Hi, Claire. I thought I would give a quick walkthrough of how I've facilitated groups in adopting the practices that come from Reinventing Organizations by Frederik Laloux. And I thought the easiest way to do that would be just to show you. My favorite tool for doing facilitation online is called MURAL, which is like a virtual whiteboard, in case you're not familiar with it. This is actually the second step in the process. The first step is introducing people to the idea of a Teal organization and a holacracy. And so I've got pretty much a PowerPoint that I walk through, and it's pretty basic, but it introduces the principles and practices that would get groups to understand what does it mean to be in a Teal organization, what does it mean to work inside a holacracy. So this assumes at this point a working understanding of what a Teal organization or a holacracy is. And then after they have a pretty good understanding of what it is, I bring them into MURAL in order to pull them into a place where they can actually decide which practices they want to put into a place. So the first step is we overview the outcome, agenda, principles, and then roles. This particular one I did for NovaScribes, which is the group that you just joined. And that the idea here is to identify practices to bring into NovaScribes and use this as a pilot for future discussions. So it's not a recap of Reinventing Organizations. This is really practice focus. So at the beginning, we start by saying, how is it that we'll make space for diverse ideas? How do we include others in all voices? And how is it that we'll handle conflict and disagreement? And because MURAL is the virtual whiteboard that it is, you can just drag and drop an idea into this. So for example, we might do something like if we start to hear people trying to speak over each other, we might do a 1-sip pause, which is the idea that the time that it takes you to take a sip from your coffee or whatever, we're just going to take a pause and let the other person speak. We do a team portrait, which is a pretty standard graphic facilitation tool where you actually go around and everybody gets a sticky note to say, hi, my name is Brian. Here's where I'm coming from. Here's my hope for what I'd like to get out of this. And we would go around the room just like that to introduce each other. I do a quick overview of the ways that you can actually start a Teal organization, one of them being from scratch, the other one is transforming an existing organization. And regardless of where you're coming from, this works, this method that I'm about to show you. So these are the practices that are outlined in Reinventing Organizations. And I start with them up here in this this holding area. And we use a process called a silent sort that would say, okay, what would be the first easiest thing to adopt in our organization? So for example, the advice process, which is a way of actually making decisions and doing governance. If you believe that that one's the most important, that one goes here on the line, and then somebody else would, grab the next one and put it here. And then what I watch for is if there's any kind of going back and forth, and somebody says this is more important or this is more important. It actually rarely happens, but what ends up happening is that people pick and choose the ones that they want, and you wind up with a stacked list of, from start to finish, which are the ones that we think are the most feasible and the easiest to implement. We're not going to try to do everything at once. What is the one place where we're going to start? And with NovaScribes, they decided to do the advice process. And if you listen in on our calls, you'll hear us use the language that comes from the advice process, creating a safe space, structured listening, natural hierarchies, and so forth. Then this box moves around. So I asked the group, okay, how many of these do we reasonably want to take on at any one time? And NovaScribes decided that they wanted to take on the first 5. Another group might take on 5 or 6, but I really try to keep it small because it's easier to implement these practices if you do it one at a time. Okay, and then we go down to the practices themselves. So let's start with this one, the advice process. I have all of the practices here. These are pretty much lifts right out of Reinventing Organizations. Oops, let me put that one back. So let's find the one on the advice process just so we can see it. Let's see, right here. So it's the first one. So here's a quick overview of the advice process. Again, remember that at this point we believe that the people who are participating have a good working understanding of each one of these practices. That came out of the first presentation. So it's a quick overview of what the advice process is in this case, and then just a place to capture ideas. And we have a good how might we question. which is to say, how might we implement the advice process in NovaScribes? And so one of the things that NovaScribes came up with is if you can advance. And what that means is that since we're a group of volunteer organizers, if any one of us has got the ability to actually carry a task forward, if they've got the bandwidth, if they've got their eye on it, if they have a little bit of spare time and energy around getting something done, then to just go out and do it. We find that things get really bogged down when you're going around checking with everybody for permission. So if you can advance, and that's part of the advice process, which is that pushing down of decision making into the kind of the ranks of the organization. So that's really it. I try to keep it as light as possible. I've got some space over here for some open discussion. We had a few things come up around like the purpose. That was something that we spoke on, and this is something that just came up as a result of talking about the purpose of NovaScribes. But that's pretty much it. And then, you know, it's the where do we start and how do we continue to close this out? You know, what is like the first thing that you're going to do? Okay. So I hope this was helpful, and I'm looking forward to talking with you.